Record button. Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to the first session of the last day of training here. So in this session, this is the assignments tool deep dive essentially for D2L Brightspace. And essentially what we want to do today, if I can move around my notes and everything, is go into a little bit more detail on everything revolving around the assignment tool or assignment folders or Dropbox, however you want to term it. In D2L, we have an assignment tool that we can use to retrieve electronic files from our students. And this is going to be entirely centered around that. As always, I am recording this session, so once it becomes available, we will be making all the sessions that have been recorded available at a later date once we've compiled all those together and put them on the web. Additionally, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat window as we go through. I will be pausing as we go through the content here to check chat and answer any questions that I can. In order to get through the content though, we may not get to every question. So if there's anything that we miss, I will be compiling an FAQ based off of the chat questions that we did not get to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about assignments. So what are the assignment folders in D2L? What are assignments? Because sometimes terminology can be a difficult thing within D2L, because in some documentation, assignments are called assignment submission folders. Sometimes they're referred to as Dropbox. Sometimes they're referred to as just assignments. Sometimes they're submission folders. I mean, it's all over the place. But in D2L, assignments, the assignment tool, is that area that you're going to create a folder that students will submit electronic files to you. I like to think of that place as a Dropbox that you're going to collect work from the students with. And those files can be anything from papers, documents, to video recordings. If the assignment is have the students complete a video that they then need to get to you, you can do so through the assignment tool as well. There are really no caps, more or less. There are some file types that the assignment tool will not accept, but they're few and far between. The majority of file types that your students will be utilizing will be accepted into the assignment tool and their assignments. So in terms of like how are you going to create these folders, these assignment submission folders? When you go into your D2L course, okay, and I have a course that I'm going to be using today here called Brightspace Tool Deep Dives. At the very top, there's an assignment button, okay? And if you click on that, it's going to take you to the assignment tool area where you can start building and creating assignments. Alternatively, if for whatever reason you don't have the assignment button on your navigational bar in your course at the top, there's always the course admin route. Oh, that would help. Carl, thank you. My goodness. Let's go ahead and redo that. There we go. Now you should see my screen. Correct? Excellent. So yes, so when you're in your course, I have my course here, Brightspace Tool Deep Dives. You're going to click on assignments at the very top. It just says assignments. As I said, alternatively, you can go through course admin, located over here on your nav bar, course admin. All tools within D2L can be accessed through the course admin functionality for the button here. So if you don't have something on your navigational bar at the top of your course, you can always go through course admin to get there. So I'm just going to go course admin. We'll go down to the assessment category here and click on assignments. And it'll take me to the exact same assignment location, the exact same assignment tool location. When you're ready to sort of build out your assignments, okay, what you do is you just click on new assignment. From here, you have 4 tabs to work from, okay, when you're building out an assignment. Right away, the only thing that is required to get an assignment going is the name field of the assignment. So in this case, I'm just going to put demo assignment 1, all right? You can put instructions If you want, if you have instructions in your syllabus or in your content area already, you can copy and paste them in there. That's fine, but it's not required. Okay. Under the attachments, if you have instructions, but maybe they're in the form of a Word file, or you have them external and you just want to upload them into D2L to attach to this assignment folder, you can. You just have to click Add Attachment, and we can click on a file, a link, or various different things. There is some integration with Google Drive and OneDrive, so if those interest you, please reach out to us and I can work with you on that. But there is some integration there. But for this purposes, I'm just going to do a normal file upload. So it's going to bring up what you're used to seeing with uploading content and uploading files. We're going to choose My Computer, because that's where I have the instructions for. Here I can drag and drop any file instructions, anything I want into this checkered area. The only catch is that it needs to be under 1 gigabyte, okay, which is generally is not going to be an issue if you're just uploading documents. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my test files here, my training files, and I'm just going to grab my syllabus to use as an example here. So I'm just going to drop a syllabus into this, and you can think of this as, it could be an instruction file, it can be anything that I might want to attach to my assignment folder. I'm just going to go ahead and hit add. And so now that those instructions are added to this assignment folder, so whenever my students come here, they'll be able to easily access those instructions and download them. Moving forward, you have an assignment type. You can either choose an individual assignment or grade assignment. The group assignment. Group assignments are only available if you have groups created. And we'll talk about groups in a little bit for the time being. So right now we don't actually have any groups created in our course, so I can't select the group assignment, okay? But we'll talk about that here in a little bit on how group assignments actually work. Under file submissions, you have a couple options to do for the submission type. The default is a file submission. This is what we're used to seeing. You know, we create the assignment folder, students are gonna submit their papers, their term papers or something electronically. So they have a file and they're going to submit it to you. You can create a text submission, and what this will do is it will give them the ability to type right in there. They'll have a text box and they can just type in what they want to submit to you. There is no upload, there is no file submission in case of a text submission. You can do on paper submissions. So essentially this just allows you to create a generic assignment folder in your course where you're still getting paper submissions, but you're sort of tracking it within D2L. Okay. Same with observed in person. More just sort of like you've seen their actual assignments, you're sort of just checking it off, but you still want to sort of keep track of their progress in the assignment tool in D2L. Okay. Alternatively, you could still just do this by creating a grade item for those assignments and just grading it manually, okay? Most of the time what we see is either file submission or text submission being used. I'm gonna go ahead and just set it to be file submission, and we're gonna go down the list again here. Files allowed per submission versus submissions in general. So this option right here, when a student submits a file, when they go to the assignment folder and they click upload, this dictates how many files specifically they can put into that initial upload, okay? So in case of student A, they come here, maybe this assignment has multiple parts. Maybe they have to submit their paper as well as a separate bibliography for that paper in 2 different files. If the unlimited option is checked, they can do that all in one fell swoop. If you check 1 file per submission, they're not going to be able to do that. They're going to have to submit their first file, hit submit, their second file, hit submit, okay? This option down here controls how many of their submissions in total are you allowing them to have, okay? How many are going to be kept. So if you select only 1 submission, they're going to only be allowed to submit something once, okay? This could be multiple files if you leave unlimited selected at the top here under files allowed per submission, or just 1 file, depending on what you've done here, but only once will they be able to hit that submit button. This option right here, only the most recent submission is kept. They're allowed multiple submits, but whatever they submitted previously is going to be removed from D2L. It's just going to be deleted, and all you're going to see is their most recent submission. And then finally, all submissions are kept. This allows them to submit as many times as they want to you, okay? So that's sort of the default generic way that we've seen, is just leaving it open, sort of unlimited submissions. But there is some distinguishing between these two options. Notification emails. If you want to be notified when a student submits a file to a submission folder, then what you want to do is actually put in here your email address. Okay. If you don't want to be bothered with that, because I will warn you, it can spam you. I mean, if you have 30 students and they all do it, submit the file, all of those emails will come to, even if you're not ready to grade or something like that. Oftentimes, what I generally recommend is maybe not doing this, and instead just setting a time when you're going to come in and check it and regularly get those submissions going. I would only do this if I was planning on actually when I would receive a notification that someone submitted, I would then go in and grade it immediately upon there. Otherwise, you're going to crowd up your inbox with 30 plus notifications when those students submit their assignments. Categories, you don't necessarily need the category. They are available if you want to sort of organize your assignment folders into specific categories, such as, like, you know, maybe you have a category for homework and all the homework submissions go there, or your specific projects, maybe like a final paper where they're going to submit maybe their final paper as well as drafts and those kinds of things. It's not really necessary. There's no real back-end functionality tied to it, like there may be in other tools, such as the gradebook. If you were part of the gradebook deep dives that we did this week, it's literally just there for you to organize your assignment folders into categories. Okay. Under evaluation and feedback, this is where you set up the scoring, the grading aspects. Score out of is just how many points is this going to be worth. Okay, I'm going to put in 10 points, just arbitrarily. The grade item is the grade item that you're going to have associated with this assignment in your grade book. You may have already created a grade item previously before you come to the assignment area. You may not have, but in D2L, they're two separate tools. Okay, you're going to need a grade item and you're going to need an assignment folder or an assessment tool. Okay, so if you haven't already created a grade item, you can do so just by clicking on new grade item from this screen. This will open up the grade item creation tool. You can click numeric, which is generally speaking the grade item that you want to select. If you want to do, there are other grade item types available to you, but they're only available if you create the grade item over in the gradebook itself. So if we click this, if we click numeric, we can then put in a grade item. I don't remember what we called this. Let me come up here and just do demo assignment 1, copy that. I always like to keep my grade items in my assignment folders consistent with names and everything. Short name is just how this would appear in your grade book spreadsheet view at the top of the column. It's just a short way of viewing it, so you don't have this entire long name. And you can get sort of explanations on what all this, on anything in D2L, if you see this little question mark with this into a circle. If you click on it, it'll give you a description of what this field actually does. Again, categories. This is separate from what we talked about earlier, this category. Categories in gradebook actually do have some alternative purposes in sort of a weighting system versus a point system. But that's beyond the scope of today's session here. But suffice to say, if you want to add a category here, you can as well. Descriptions, you don't really need anything like that. This is in a different tool. It's not going to have the same instructions. Students are only going to view the gradebook to see how they did on an assignment rather than view the gradebook first before they actually do the assignment. And then under grading, you want to try to match, you want to try to be consistent and keep matching the score out of on the assignment with the maximum points allowed on the grade item itself. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same. The system will calculate on the back end and do its thing to sort of get it the same percentage and everything. But just for clarity, I like to keep them consistent. You have two options. If this is an assignment that's going to be a bonus assignment, completely bonus, you don't want it to count against the student if they don't do it, you want to select this bonus item right here, okay? If this assignment contains possible bonus items, but is not an entire bonus assignment, maybe you're giving 1 bonus point in this assignment for something, you can uncheck bonus and make this can exceed. And what that allows you to do is go above that 10 maximum point value that you put in on this assignment. So the system will give them 10 out of 10, as well as that 1 extra bonus point that will help them. All right. Aside from that, we just scroll down and everything else is sort of defaulted. You can keep that grade item set up and just hit save. From there, you're pretty much done on this side of, on this tab of the setup of the grade item or the assignment folder here. You can add rubrics. You can grade everything pretty much in D2L, from quizzes to discussion areas to assignments to so on and so forth, with rubrics that you can create right from within D2L. It's a more advanced tool. I plan on going over rubric creation and how this works at a later session today, the last session of the day, for more advanced tools. But suffice to say, you can create a rubric and then use that rubric to quickly grade the assignment folder. Okay. We'll go back. Oh, wait, right here is my window. Aside from that, annotation tools is a recent addition to the assignment tool. And is on by default and is a actual very useful tool when you're coming to grade and provide feedback in the assignment tool. It's something that D2L has not had for years, and we only just got access to it. Prior to this, you would have to, if you wanted to annotate on the document itself, you would have to use something like Turnitin's grade mark to do that. However, it's now built into the document viewer of D2L, so that when you actually do go into grade an assignment, as long as it's checked, you'll have the option of putting, writing on the student's document. You'll be able to add text. You'll be able to add notes right on the document itself. And we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and leave that checked. Moving on to the restrictions. Under restrictions, that's where you sort of handle all the due dates, the due date, the availability dates. And I'm often asked, like, what is the difference between a due date and an end date? Okay. So in D2L, typically you have a start and end date for pretty much every tool. Occasionally tools will have due dates. Sometimes they won't. Such as discussions don't have due dates. The due date in the assignment tool basically allows you to accept late work if you want. So generally speaking, availability dictates when this assignment is going to be available to the students to submit to. All right. So in this case, once we save this, our students will be able to submit to this assignment folder from 8/6/2020 to 8/13/2020, with the time as well. If I add a due date, okay, and put this due date at somewhere in between the start and end dates, say maybe 8/10, what this is going to allow me to do is flag late work. So if I accept late work, I want the students to have their assignment in by 8/10, okay? But if they submit early or if they submit later, that's fine. The system will flag it, and I can make the adjustments to the grade based off of my late work policy. And normally what you would see, instead of having this sort of week-long period, you either may not have an end date, or you might set this to be the end of the semester kind of thing. And so what this setup would allow for is students beginning on 8/6/2020 will be able to submit their assignment through the entire semester, but after 8/10/2020, it's going to be flagged late to you. So you can see that they submitted it, but they submitted it late. If you set this end date to say here and take off the due date, if you just have the 8/12, what this is going to be is after 8/12, they lose access to actually submitting the end date. Allison, so you don't need to use the due date. Correct. You don't necessarily need the due date. Some people generally like that terminology of due date as opposed to availability ends on like the calendar and so on and so forth. So if you like that, but you don't want to accept late work, what I generally recommend is that you set the due date to match the end date and have that be good to go. But yes, it is optional. Under release conditions, so release conditions are another sort of advanced tool that we'll talk about at the last session of today. But just a quick overview of what you can do with release conditions on any assignment, any tool that you set up. You can set specific conditions for this to be released, such as, we can't, if we create and attach, maybe we don't want them to be able to submit to this assignment until they have visited a content topic. Okay, so this doesn't open up until they view the introduce yourself discussion, and we can create that. And so now what that's going to require is that student actually go to that area of the content, they click on introduce yourself module, and then that will open up. You can also set this to be like an actual assignment. So maybe we wanted to do, instead of going to just visiting a content topic, maybe we actually want them to actually post to that discussion first. So if we scroll down here, posts authored in a topic, we can click on that, and then we can select the actual discussion. So I want them to actually post to introduce yourself. They only have to do one post, that's okay. And then we can hit create. Now they actually have to go to the discussion area, post to the discussion area, then this assignment will open up. Case scenarios here could be based around video. If they click on a video in your course, maybe that opens up a quiz kind of thing that they then have to complete. Alternatively, maybe visiting the syllabus is the only way to gain access to the syllabus quiz, those kinds of things. Okay. So that's more how you could use release conditions. Now, if you want to learn more about release conditions, again, I would come to the last session today, as that's where I'll be talking more in depth about those sort of advanced tools in D2L. Finally, on the restrictions tab of the assignment folder, you have special access. Special access is what you can use to provide accommodations to students with accommodations. For example, maybe you're going to set this up to have an extra attempt or something versus what other students have. You can set that up here to add user special access. Or maybe you want to keep the end dates and due dates as is for the rest of the class, but maybe you want to reopen this folder for a student who missed that end date and has an excuse or something along those lines. This tool will allow you to do that. The first option here is that scenario option. So you want to give this assignment to the rest of your class with these restrictions, okay? But you're going to add users to have special restrictions. So if we click on add users to special access, that's going to open up another area where we can set due date and end dates. All right. And so in this case, we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to add an extension to the end date here to say the end of the month. And I'm going to add Laura student to this restriction here. And so now what she's going to have access to is different than what the rest of the class is. The rest of the class is going to end their availability on 8/12. They'll no longer have access to this assignment folder. But Laura has an end date of 8/31. So she will be able to continue to post to this assignment folder past 8/12. Okay. Use cases again are, I've had requests on students who have an excuse, they missed submitting. and they had a valid excuse. So faculty wanted to know how to open that specific assignment folder up, again, just for that student. Special access is how you would use that. This second option here is a way for you to basically just lock down this assignment folder to just be visible to people with special access. It doesn't get used a lot. And quite honestly, it's very niche into when you would want to use that. It's essentially if you want to set up an assignment folder that is just for a specific student, like a brand new assignment folder that's just for a specific student. You can use special access to sort of dictate that availability. Okay. Are there any questions on these restrictions? Because I know we've gotten a lot of inquiries over restrictions in assignment folders and special access and so on and so forth. Feel free to chime in, assuming my headset is actually on, and actually, or just post in the chat as well. Aside from those, the properties and the restrictions, objectives is another interesting tool. We won't go too deeply into it because it's, you know, you can, in D2L, you can set up competencies, you can bring over your objectives from your courses and your syllabi and put them into D2L and then add associations to those learning objectives in pretty much everything you set up in D2L. And that's where you would do it. Most of the time, I don't see this get used quite a bit, but it is there. If you are interested to learn more about objectives, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to work with you on that. The final thing we'll talk about with the actual setup of the assignment here is Turnitin. Turnitin provides plagiarism checks for you. So if you're not familiar with it, students will submit to this assignment their file, and depending on the file type, it will run through Turnitin's plagiarism check and give you a report on how much of that is flagged as plagiarism. All right. To actually enable it, what you do is you come into your assignment, you edit it, or during creation, you click on the Turnitin tab. From here, you have to enable GradeMark. Okay, GradeMark is an external third-party tool that Turnitin provided, which allowed for you to provide inline annotated feedback on the document, similar to what I was talking about earlier. Prior to recently, that was the only way of actually annotating on the student's document, providing that feedback. But you don't have to use it. But it does have to be enabled in order to get the second option, which is the originality check, which is the actual plagiarism check. So if we enable that, we are now ready to submit and save this so that students actually get plagiarism checked when they submit it. We have a couple of options on frequency and display. So this option here, if you want your students to be able to see their report, you can check this. If you don't, if you want to keep it private until you sort of meet with the student, if there's an issue, you can uncheck it. Entirely up to you. The frequency is when is this going to be processed on the Turnitin side? 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to have automatic originality check on all submissions selected. If for whatever reason you want them to submit everything and you want to push all those processes, the checks at once, you'd want to leave the second option selected, which is identify individual submissions for originality check. This will require you to manually push a button in order to push through their submissions one at a time. So like I said, rarely is this used. Oftentimes I've seen it used and it's a mistake, and instructors didn't realize they had set it up that way and they're not getting reports. So just case in point. I'm actually going to leave this option selected because I do want to show later on what it's going to look like if you have that selected and you need to actually manually submit a folder that has been submitted. All right. This is different from having to actually manually take a student's file that they emailed you and submit it for them. This is different than that. This is just initiating the process of an already submitted file. Carl, did you have a question?
Yeah, question. What if you're trying to have students submit a group assignment in which they did work in groups, you haven't set it up for groups, But you tell them it's okay to submit, the same response per person, but I do want everyone to submit a response, so I have a submission for each student. How do you turn it in not to look at each student's identical submission as plagiarism versus a student plagiarizing from outside the university? Or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I would probably recommend in that case to use the group assignment folder for one thing.
I see.
And if you're asking every person to submit essentially the same document,
right,
then I would probably use identify individual submissions for originality check, because that would allow you as the instructor to say, I'm just going to submit one of these submissions to turn it in order for those submissions to get checked. Now, there is an alternative, and I'm not sure in this scenario if it's what you're looking for, but one thing that's not on by default but is available under more options and turn it in is the designation of whether or not you want these papers to be submitted after they've been checked to Turnitin's repository to be checked against later on. The case scenario that I usually use for this is if you have a final paper, but you expect them to submit multiple drafts to you. Maybe you want those to get checked to the greater repository of Turnitin, but you don't want it to be flagging every time they submit it off their own paper, their own previous draft. Here you could click do not store, and then any paper submitted to this file is going to be checked to the greater repository, but not anything from the actual folder itself. So you could probably set it up this way as well, and have them just submit their papers, and as long as none of those papers are going to be checked against one another in that scenario too.
Okay.
So either or I think would work. This option right here would save you from having to actually manually submit papers to Turnitin, like actually clicking the button to submit it and go through that process.
Okay, thanks.
One follow-up question on this, Scott.
Yep.
If we're asking it not to check against the repository, that means it won't be checking against other students in the same class?
Correct.
So you wouldn't pick up students in the same class who are sharing their work, if that's
correct.
True. Okay.
That it's literally like, it's basically the best case scenario for that is that draft sample, or the draft scenarios where you may not want that until the final paper is submitted to catch all those, but you might want them to, see the reports going on if they have been using outside sources and those kinds of things. But if you are concerned about, that's right, if you are concerned that they are working together and that there's sort of intercommingling of papers, you wouldn't know that until the final paper is submitted, at which point then you'll get those checks. It is worth noting though that it's not, when it comes to the plagiarism check, depending on the order with which they've submitted, a student might have copied one paper but submitted before that person that they've copied, and theirs would be flagged with a 0%, whereas the person they copied from might be flagged as 100%. And that's just how, it's just whatever order that they submit, that's when the paper goes in and then starts getting checked across the further submissions.
But ultimately, you think assigning the groups would avoid that, because each group would basically be allowed to submit a similar document and not be considered plagiarizing. But if a different group submitted a similar document, then it could be viewed as plagiarizing.
Well, no, not necessarily. The reason I would recommend a group assignment setup for that scenario is mainly in the grading portion of it. You would still need to either do the option where you're identifying them manually, or setting up the do not store in the repository, because you're still allowing them to submit as like everybody's submitting a file.
Right.
And all of those files would still go in and be checked unless otherwise.
Right. The thing I'm facing is I have these group assignments, and I tell the student I want an individual submission for my grade book so that everyone submits. I don't just want one member of the group submitting on behalf of the whole group, because the grade book wouldn't recognize the other students as having submitted an assignment. So what I tell them is you can submit your answers, and you can collaborate as a group, and face-to-face small group discussion, back in the day when we could do that, or in your breakout rooms, and you can either submit responses in your own words, or you can submit a group response in which everyone submits the same agreed upon response. So if group one is made up of 5 students, and those 5 students all submit their own work, but it's roughly similar because they're basically responding to the solution to the same problem.
Correct. Yeah.
Then that would be something that could be flagged, but I don't want group one plagiarizing from group 2. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what I would recommend in your case, based on what you just said, is that you identify one paper from each group to be checked, to be pushed through the system.
I see. Okay.
And then leave the rest of them processed on the turn.
And what about the repository thing? Because we'll Turnitin then show each group response now as part of its repository?
Correct. It'll be based on the order that you push them, that you actually process them. But yeah, I would still keep the standard paper repository. That way things get checked from each group against one another. But by selecting the identify individually, it allows you to just submit to Turnitin one of those papers as opposed to all of them.
Right. Okay.
Okay. But yeah, that's actually a scenario that's not come up yet. So that would be my recommendation for that kind of thing.
Okay.
You can, and this is more out of the scope here because this isn't sort of like a Turnitin specific training, but you can exclude sources once the submissions have been, once you have the originality report. So you could go into the originality report and exclude certain sources to get an idea of what the actual score is. So if you have them all getting flagged as 100% off of one another, you could go into them and just remove the papers within their group. But it's a more sort of like manual heavy process, and one that we don't really have time to show off here. But if that is something you'd be interested in taking a look at, just reach out to me and I can show you that one-on-one.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So I like I said, I'm going to go ahead and leave this one unchecked so that I can show you what that manual process would look like. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this option, and I'm just going to hit save and close. So now this assignment folder is ready to go for students to submit to. I have one already created here that I'm going to show off here in a minute. But this is the sort of the submission view page when you come to assignments. If you have them created, you can see from this that I have one outstanding new submission for my Turnitin grade demonstration here. So this means that a student has submitted to it. I have one of 2. So this is showing how many students I have in the class and how many have completed this assignment. This column here, evaluated, this shows me how many I've actually evaluated. I have not evaluated any of them thus far. And then finally, this shows how many published feedbacks I have, because you can draft your feedback. So I can evaluate a submission, but not necessarily publish it to the students for them to see. And we'll see that here in a minute when we go in here to grade the Turnitin grade demonstration. Before we do that though, I'm going to go back to our content area because I want to show you exactly how students have the options of actually submitting it to your assignment folders. So in my assignments module, I'm going to add another quick link for them. Okay, and we'll talk about quick links here after I add them. I have one for my assignment Turnitin grade demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and click existing activities because it's already been created. If I wanted to create an assignment right from the content area, I could just by clicking upload and create and doing new assignment down here. But because we've already done it, I'm just going to click on existing activities and click assignments. This is going to list all the assignments that I've created in the class. I'm going to go ahead and just click on demo assignment 1 here. And there we have a demo assignment quick link in my content area for the students. So if I come over to the class list now and log in as one of these students, so let's say Laura here, and do impersonate. Yes. As a student, I have 2 options in our current setup. Okay. I can come to the content area and go to the assignment module, which is where I set up that quick link. And you can think of this as a weekly module. So week 1, week 2, week 3. I like the use of quick links to put in those weekly modules so that students know every given week what is available, what they have to do. There's an assignment there, there's a quiz there. Those quick links are useful for guiding the student through the course. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to click on assignments here as a student. And here I see I have an available assignment that I can click on. I also see the due dates. From there, I can actually upload or download the instructions, in this case, my syllabus document. But I can go ahead and click upload. I can do a test file and hit open. I can add comments for the instructor. Hello, my comments. This is a great paper. And hit submit. And so now she's going to get a confirmation email to confirm that she submitted a file to the instructor. And she's done. She can leave. The other way that they can access it, and this can be done without the quick link setup, is just by clicking on assignments in the nav bar. In the nav bar, listing all of the assignments in the class and the things that they can access. So for example, if I wanted Laura to submit to the Turnitin grade demonstration here, I could click on Turnitin grade demonstration as Laura and do the same add a file and give the same comments if I wanted to. The trouble with having them come through the assignment tool sometimes is that depending on how many assignment folders and how many papers and things that you provide to your students in the class, this list can be pretty long. You know, sometimes they're going to have to come in here and try to find it. Meanwhile, they're outside of the content area where some of the general content for the course is. So it can be confusing sometimes. But if you don't have too many assignments, or it's entirely optional to use the quick links. If you think your students are fine with just going to the assignment areas, it's certainly quicker for you to set up, as well as sort of for them to get to. If you don't have too many assignments, you can just not do the content area quick links. Okay. So if I go and log off of Laura here, and as the instructor, if I'm ready to start grading assignments, I can. I'll just click on assignments in my nav bar. And here I can see that I have a demo assignment. I have 1 submission to grade here, and I have a Turnitin grade demonstration, 1 assignment to complete or to grade here. So let's look at the Turnitin grade demonstration first. This is the one that I set up to automatically give me a Turnitin file, a Turnitin check. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Turnitin grade demonstration. And as you can see, I have a list of my students that have submitted. Here's Amber's submission, my test file. We can see that it's being flagged by Turnitin for 85% of the content here. All right. If I wanted to see that and look at that, I would just click on 85%. This is going to open up in Turnitin, and it's going to show me what's flagged here. Now, obviously, this is just a test file that I've submitted multiple times. So that's what it's flagging on. If I, on the right-hand side here, is a match overview option, and it shows that 85. If I click on that, it's going to start showing me what it's sort of comparing to. All right, so if I click on this, it shows me an internet source. It shows me where from that internet source this test file, so on and so forth is going by. And I can keep drilling down in here if the options are available. Instead, I just have sort of various different options. See, here's jmcollege.com. I have various different options under that specific resource that I can look at. If I wanted to exclude any of these resources, I can certainly exclude them by hitting this, selecting the resource I want to exclude and hitting exclude and choosing the one I want. and hitting exclude there. And now my drop is now down to 60%. Okay, so you can do that if you want. If it flags something you don't believe is actually valid, you can exclude it and get a more accurate count. All right. From the standpoint of grading then, okay, so that's the turn it in side. If I wanted to then grade this file, I just have to select the file. I just have to click on the file name. Okay. Once that opens up, it's going to give me a document viewer of the actual assignment folder of what they've submitted. And from here, I can download the file if I wanted to by clicking download, or provide it on the left-hand side. I can provide the score over here. Sorry, the right-hand side, I can provide the score over here. So like 8 points, that kind of thing. I can give general overarching feedback on the assignment. Or what we were talking about earlier, we now have the annotated feedback option. So if I look here, I have some annotation tools at the top of the document viewer where I can I can select this and just start drawing on the paper. I can also set up sort of a comment or a note. This needs addressed, that kind of thing. Alternatively, I could just do a text box. Hello, those kinds of things. So you now have those annotation tools at your disposal when grading these assignments, okay? And when you're ready, you can either save it as a draft, which will not make it visible currently to the student, or you can hit publish to actually publish it so that the student can see that feedback. It is worth noting that you can also record video and audio feedback as well. So if you wanted to set that up and give that sort of video feedback, you can do that. But let's go ahead and hit publish and hit yes. Okay. So that's the one assignment. Now, before we close out here, the last thing I wanted to show you with regards to like grading here is in that one that we created. I wanted to show you what you might experience if you don't have the turn-in similarity set up to automatically process. When we go into demo assignment 1 here and click that, what we're going to see is under turn it in similarity, you're going to see a little mailbox with an arrow pointing in. And you may see this if the turn it in, even if you have it set up to automatically process, but maybe there was a hiccup or a glitch or something and it didn't actually process properly, you'll see this little button here. This little button, if you click on it, is going to force that thing to be processed into turn it in. And it may take a little time depending on the time of day, depending on how, how big the files are and how many you're, pushing through and that kind of thing. But overall, it's not too bad, okay, before that comes up. Another last final thing is if you do sort of set this up as a draft, you want to grade all of your papers before you make them available to the students. So I'm just going to grade this one, put a 5 here, but I'm just going to save as draft. Once I do that, and I return to my submission page, you'll notice that Laura's student has a draft saved on August 6, 2020. I can now publish that simply by checking the students or clicking this to select all the students and hitting publish feedback. It'll give me a little warning. Are you sure you want to publish it? Hit yes. And now it is listed as being published. And so now the students can actually see their grade on that assignment. And depending on if you've actually associated the assignment with the grade book, the actual publishing of that grade item should then bring you over to, that grade over to the actual grade book itself. All right, so if we look at our enter grades here, we can see that turn it in demonstration, we've got a submission here and it's 8 out of 10. And the demo assignment 1 we have for Laura, it's a 5 out of 10. And if we click on this, we can go directly to the assignment that the student submitted if we wanted to. Okay. So we're a little over time, 5 minutes over time. I've pretty much hit the majority of things that I wanted to. Are there any questions?
Yes, I got a question. Something that's I wanted to figure out for a long time. If you go back to the assignments folder,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way to get a list of names of the students who have not submitted their work yet? I know you can click on email students without submissions and you just see the email
Mm-hmm.
addresses, but
Yeah.
I want to see the names of the students.
So the easiest way to do that, and that actually is a good point. When you look at the submission tab of a assignment folder, so I'm going to look at Turnitin grade demonstration here. If I show search options, like so, if I click show search options, by default, it's just going to show you the students in your class that have submissions for that assignment. But you can change this so that you just see users without submissions. And then when you do that and you hit search, there we can see Laura's student doesn't have any submission. So it's a little hidden. This option here, this sort of like viewing option and searching option is available in other areas such as the quiz tool. If you're looking for students that may not have taken a quiz or may have started a quiz but not actually finished it, you can set those up to sort of search through your students to see the status of those. Excellent question. I should have actually
in the past, I've done assignment submissions without Turnitin, and it always gives me the option at the top: view incomplete submissions, view completed submissions, and then if you just choose view incomplete, it'll show you all the students who haven't submitted anything yet.
Are you talking about like whenever you actually grade them?
Or no, well, you can just click on submissions right there.
Yeah.
And it'll show you at the top. Yeah, no, that's different than what I'm used to.
It's sort of this, these are two different ways of viewing various different submissions. I mean, it's sort of the same process. If you're looking at the submission tab instead of users, you would still sort of hit this show search options.
Right.
And you would choose the.
Maybe this is just through Turnitin, because I didn't use the Turnitin portal or whatever. I was just using D2L, and D2L did give me at the top, you could link on users with incomplete submissions, users with complete submissions, or all users, and it would show you the whole class list, and it would show you who turned it in and who didn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing about D2Ls. There are certain areas of the course where you might be able to get that are sort of off the beaten path.
I see.
This is generally the route that I recommend, because it's not only useful in assignments, but it's also useful in other tools like quizzes, right, to sort of filter submits. But there are I think in like notifications and things like that, there are screens that you can probably get to that might be a little easier, but
this was just in the assignments under D2L. But
like over just in general over here.
Yeah. I would just click on the assignment itself.
Yeah, I mean, when you click on the assignment, it's going to take you into either your user submissions or your submissions in general. But again, you still would have to show those search options.
Yeah, I don't know why, but mine just as a default came up with users with incomplete submissions, and then I could see how many students hadn't yet submitted. So anyway, that's just my experience using the assignments in the past. Not
I'll look into it and see if I can figure out if there's anything else. But yeah, because this option here, like the submission, I mean, you can sort of like filter from here, but you're not going to see the students' names or anything.
Right.
This is entirely just submission based.
This showed me the whole class list, and if I would click on incomplete submissions, it would just show me the students who hadn't yet submitted anything.
Okay.
And if I clicked on complete, it would show me just the students who had completed. And if I clicked on all, it would show me the full class list, and then it would show me those submissions completed. The next student might have no submission. It would show me the whole class list, and I could see who hadn't submitted.
Okay.
But that's through the assignments folder. I know I've done it in the past. So anyway,
Yeah.
also, I wanted to ask you, how did you impersonate a student?
That's that's a functionality that's only available to administrate like super admin accounts.
Okay, so
Um,
we as professors can't see what the student sees, just you.
Correct. Well, the view as student view basically does 90% of that. The main reason impersonate is restricted is like actually impersonating their accounts is because you can literally do work for the student.
How do we get to student view then? As
So when you're in your course, if you click on your name here,
right.
you can do view as student.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are you as instructors, you do have certain impersonation abilities. One of which is if you're interested in the quiz tool and stuff like that, come to that session. But there is an option to submit a quiz for a student who may not have actually hit submit on their attempt, but they're locked out of doing that.
Right.
So you can sort of force their submission in sort of an impersonation format, but it's a little different functionality. But it still marks you on the quiz log as being the person who actually submitted for them.
Right.
But yeah, we restrict the full impersonation because of that sort of caveat that it literally lets you control that user's account.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Ahmed, how do you submit? Okay. So the assignment folder section is done. I am going to retool for the next one here, but if you want to, Ahmed, I am going to show you real quick how you can submit a file manually to turn it in if you're looking to do that. There are instructions on this, and I'll throw them in the chat box here. Because this session is not meant to do fully turn it in, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of actually getting your account and logging in to turn it in and anything like that. But I knew Ahmed was going to be here, so I did prep to show this. So let me pop over and log in. Okay, so Ahmed, I believe you were able to get to the administrator instructor point of view because from the screenshot you showed, and you can see your active classes. So when you're looking at this list, your active class, I'm just going to go into Brightspace tool dives because this is the one I was just working in. And here you can see the grade, the actual submission folders that I've created and I've gotten actual submissions for in my grade book. If I click more actions over here, I can actually hit submit. And from there, I can, if I'm submitting for a student, I can select Amber student and then submit a file for her specifically. But if I'm just doing it myself, if I'm trying to submit a file myself, I just do non-enrolled student and just type in my own name. I'm just going to use a demo name here, John Smith. My submission, and then I can search for the file on my computer, then hit upload. And then confirm it. And so now I can just go back to the assignment inbox and turn it in, and I can see it's gonna give me that similarity report for that assignment. If you don't have any assignment folders already created, because I believe Turnitin will only create these assignment folders when a student in your D2L course submits a file to it. Okay, even if you've set up the assignment folder and you set up Turnitin with that assignment folder, I'm pretty sure that Turnitin will not actually create the folder on its end until a submission has been made to that folder. If that is the case, then you would just have to create an assignment right and turn it in by hitting add assignment. And you can choose paper assignment, hit next step. Come on. Come on. There we go. And just give it any title. Give it any point value, doesn't really matter. All you're really after is the similarity report. And then hit submit. And then just go through that same process of submitting. Okay? Great. Okay, we are going to be transitioning now into quizzes and surveys. So I'm going to take 1 minute to pause my screen share and start that process. Ahmed, I am going to be releasing all these. All the sessions this week are being recorded. We're going to have to compile them in some way, shape, or form and get them out to faculty. All of my sessions have been done, and I plan on uploading them to YouTube and then adding the links to a web page on the Shippensburg website. So we'll be making all the recordings available through those links and everything. We just don't have a time frame yet until all these sessions are completed and all the videos become available, because each recording takes a little time to process on the Zoom side. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for now. Yes.